To be honest, because I've never experienced not being autistic, it's hard to explain. I haven't said this yet, but I was going to say this. It does kind of make me feel a bit chained up at times. Like, when I'm trying to get words out, I can't really think of the right words and stuff. Just hard.
It's hard to explain, there's so many different levels of it. Like, there's not one specific level, and people associate it with one kind of level.
Because it's a spectrum.
Yeah.
It's not a flat line.
Exactly. Like, when I was younger, I wouldn't be able to express my feelings. I would express my feelings by doing something stupid, like when you're 5 years old. But now I can actually tell them how I'm feeling, and I guess they've learned a lot about me, yeah.
In my household, it's what we call normal, because everybody in my household has a diagnosis of some sort. But in the outside world, it's extremely difficult because everybody's heard of the word autism, but they don't understand that the spectrum is so wide, yeah, that you could sit anywhere on it. So just because you've got a diagnosis of autism, I've got a diagnosis of autism, for example, it doesn't mean that we're both going to present it in the same way. So it's difficult, but once you pay attention to the actual people, it's not as hard as what a lot of people make it out to be.
So with undiagnosed ADHD and autism, I was in mountains of debt. I found it very hard to get organised. I found it very hard to plan ahead. So as a teacher, you know, it's all about the planning. You know, I could plan the lessons. The lessons were great. They mostly, you know, were fun, interactive. I tried to make them creative. But the admin side of teaching was hard. And I couldn't understand why I couldn't focus in noisy environments, why I couldn't hear, why I was so distracted. So then I kind of started researching about ADHD, autism, and many other kind of neurological conditions. And then it all started to make sense.
So it was only a couple of years ago that I was diagnosed with autism as well. Yeah, just understanding there's a whole different Lisa. And I think I carried on masking for quite a long time because I was worried about, particularly in my profession, I was worried that people would see me differently. And you think that really shouldn't be the case because I already have an established profession. I've already been out there doing it. I run my own business. But you still have that concern that when you tell people, oh, actually, I've got autism and ADHD, that they will immediately think, oh, maybe she can't do the job after all. So that's been a really kind of interesting journey that I've been going through in these last couple of years.
Like, people would treat you normally, like they wouldn't look at me and say, oh, you're autistic. But then if it ever gets mentioned, they start treating me like I'm really low on the spectrum, and I feel there's a massive stigma around it, and it does make me a bit anxious and a bit upset that still exists today's world.
The stigma around neurodiversity and being on the spectrum, I mean, it exists everywhere. It always has been. I think I think society naturally challenges people that are a little bit different. You know, they do put that stigma on it. And I think there's a bigger stereotype with, you know, the autistic side of the spectrum rather than the ADHD as something that you can get picked on. So again, you know, that is something that they're both as and of the same. You know, you have different severities of it, so that needs to change. I think we've got to work together to kind of just include the spectrum into the day-to-day life, you know, and make it known that it's okay to be a bit different, you know.
I did get excluded for things I felt like I didn't necessarily do, like I got behaviour points for calling out, or if I sighed too loud, they would give me behaviour points. My behaviour points were generally over the roof. It was shocking looking back at it now. You know, being diagnosed with autism around the time, it kind of just being labelled and being told that, oh, you're this, you're just rude, you're this, you're that, was like a lot. And then coming here and just being told like that label doesn't define you, you're who you are, autism is just, you know, just another name, so you don't really have to worry about it while you're here. It's really good.
I did grow up with very low self-esteem. I didn't realise it at the time. Low self-worth and low confidence. I would never speak up in a group. I was always too afraid of looking stupid because my abilities were either very good or very not very good. Like with maths and science, I was never very good. I was always very good at writing, reading, and sports.
I am not who you see. I have a mask which is impenetrable. Nobody sees past it. The only person in my life that really sees past it is my wife, because she sees me in those moments that other people don't. I am incredibly effective at masking my autism. And so you ask anybody else and I'm that confident person that runs those events, that does this, that does that. Nobody really knows. They don't see that person that goes into a room of 300 people and sort of goes straight for a corner and hopes that nobody will speak to them and, you know, generally tries to avoid eye contact. What they see is somebody who walks into the room, has lots of friends, knows everybody that's in there, gets up on the stage and does a little presentation. People see me as being that ultra confident person. That's the way I portray myself. That's the act that I put on. That is how my career has gone, and that's why I'm where I am today. And there's nothing wrong with that.
So I don't know if this is ADHD or just me or like my neurodiversity, but I do fundamentally believe I can do anything if I put my mind to it. I have this like belief, you know, whether it be accounting, whether it be, you know, building a rocket. I feel like if someone said do it, you know, it might take me a few tries, but I feel like I could get somewhat there by the end of it. I think that's kind of key to my development as an entrepreneur. You know, you have to just throw yourself in head first and just take it as and when it comes.
So I appeared that I was functioning well. I was in teaching for 17 years and I was in mainstream schools, special schools and alternative education organisations, and I wasn't coping well in the workplace. Whether it was, you know, demands made of me verbally that I couldn't remember, then it would be like, well, why haven't you done this? Sitting through long meetings was very hard and not feeling that I could just get up and leave. You know, luckily I'm not in those situations anymore.
Asperger's for my son looks like someone who is easily triggered by things that perhaps most of us wouldn't be. So we'll take your words literally, and that can be a positive, it could be a negative. Will be very sensitive to criticism, so can be quite hurt, but will not demonstrate that hurt. Will struggle to kind of put himself forward in some situations, and in a situation where he has to be somewhere at a certain time and follow rules, that causes huge anxiety. Attention deficit disorder, to the non-informed, ill-informed, he looks restless, fidgety, easily distracted, bit of a joker, always wanting to kind of get things over and done with and move on to the next thing. Just restless behaviour. And for the PDA, the best way to ask him to do something is not to ask him to do something. So our kind of way of understanding our son is that he will do it in his own way, in his own time.
There's been some really, really tough times, like really tough, on your knees, like bawling times. But it's difficult because when you're doing these documentaries, you don't want to demonise the young person because they're going through this massive trauma. None of us understand, and then you're all kind of, and the challenges it brings to the family are huge, but I don't want my son to see that because I don't want him to feel even more guilty than he already, does do you know what I mean?
So going out for a meal, we would have to do a pre-visit to the restaurant. We'd find a corner booth. We'd make sure there was a power socket in the booth. We'd then go, he'd take his laptop, and so you kind of have to sort of preempt everything. But the sudden realization that you're not going to live the normal, happy family life, that you are not going to be able to just make a decision to go out. You have to preempt, you have to plan. You have to have arguments with people in the restaurant about your son with his laptop on the table, and they think that's awful manners. And then you have to almost defend your child in a restaurant on a Sunday when you're going out to do something nice. And so that's tricky.
So I think there's a lot more awareness now. I think early on, I found that you were constantly having to keep explaining yourself all the time. And there was a time where you almost felt like you had to have a permanent badge carried around. My son is autistic. And I found in every situation we're in, I'm having to keep explain, sorry, do you mind? You know, my son is autistic. I don't feel that you have to do that so much now. I think there's a lot more awareness out there, but it's more than just awareness. It's about acceptance, and it's about being accepted, being different, and that's okay.